You have a new climate plan. You're bringing some big names in the Republican Party on board with it. But how do you convince a president who has said at one point that he thought climate change was a hoax generated by the Chinese?
Well, I'm not sure we do, and we may not. But this is a good plan, both from a policy standpoint and from a political standpoint, in my opinion. It's good from a policy standpoint because it is a conservative, free market, limited government approach to a problem. Without debating how severe the problem is or the extent to which it might be man-made, it is a problem, right now at least. And Republicans have not been at the table because we've been basically skeptics or deniers. Now, when you have companies like BP and Exxon and Total and Shell all saying we ought to have a carbon tax of some sort, I think we ought to listen to that. And when you see what's happening to the environment, even though it may be consistent with what's happened 10,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago, it's a risk that we shouldn't have to take. So here is a conservative, free market, limited government, competitive, in terms of America's competitive. It's an America First solution.
Before we get to the details, when you read the parts in your mission statement about the politics, essentially saying the Republican Party, younger voters, voters of color, voters of diversity,
right.
If you want to be a viable party 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you should address this issue, get out ahead of this issue that's so important to these voters. But what do you say when you see the President of the United States or the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader who say, well, look at the moment. We're winning with the position we're at right now. And we're winning not only the presidency and keeping the Congress, but we're winning the governor's seats and we're winning the state legislative seats. Why would they change?
Well, they may not change. That doesn't mean that the policy is not a really good policy or that the politics doesn't work for the Republican Party. They may not change. That's life. But this is a good policy if you are a Republican, a conservative Republican who believes in limited government, who is opposed to taxes, even though this is a carbon tax. It is not building government because the proceeds are rebated to the American people. It is a pro-U.S. international competition proposal because imports from countries that don't have an equivalent carbon regime will be hit with some sort of a border adjustment provision, and exporters from America who have paid the taxes will have those rebated.
Do you feel, as somebody with your stature, that you're, to a degree, spitting into the wind given the current political environment on this issue in Washington?
Well, I think it's an uphill slog. That doesn't make it wrong. It's the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned, both from a policy standpoint and from a political standpoint. And more and more people who were juxtaposition against it are now beginning to see the merits of it, or the possible merits of it. I like this scheme, of this proposal, because it rebates every dollar in tax collected to the American people. So you're not growing government. You don't have a great big bureaucracy. The Social Security Administration's already there. Everybody who has a Social Security number gets a rebate. A $40 per ton carbon tax would give the average family of four, I think, $2,000 a year in carbon dividends. It's going to be very popular from that standpoint.
To the point you just made, I assume that would be your pitch to the president, who thinks a lot about winning Pennsylvania, winning Michigan, winning Wisconsin, the blue-collar workers who, at first glance, would say, you're going to raise my price at the pump. You're saying,
wait a minute, we will raise your prices at the pump. This would raise your prices at the pump, but you're going to get that money rebated to you in cash. And it's going to be more meaningful to you because some of you will not have your prices raised so much at the pump that you would come close to the amount of money you might get back. That we don't know exactly how that will work out. But is it a long shot? Sure. But that doesn't mean it's not something we ought to do. And again, our country should be leading on this issue. Republicans should be leading on this issue. They should be at the table. And this, once again, I can tell you, is conservative. It's small government. It protects competitiveness. And it's the kind of I think it's the kind of approach that Republicans ought to be enthusiastic about.
You have a history of sometimes knowing how to shake things up in this town. What do you think the magic, what's the magic to get at least a conversation, a real debate about this, whether you think you can sell your plan or not, but to get people away from the statements from the interest groups, away from just appeasing the base back home or generating fundraising, to actually have a conversation and a debate about it?
Well, I don't think you're going to have that conversation and debate unless the executive branch shows some interest in it. And we're hopeful that that'll happen. It may not. But we have a Republican administration now, a Republican administration that could show leadership on this issue and present to the blue-collar workers that were so important to Trump's victory something that does not increase, does not build government, that is conservative, that's free market. Let the market determine. And there's some support out there for that now, from quarters that normally didn't support this kind of thing.